But hopefully, yeah, it should be just a moment or two. You're going to see me drop, and the chat's going to be like, oh, my God, Ayesee's gone. Oh, my God. So, but I'll just hop back in. So I had a drop. Now, I'll just pick the story up where I think it left off. So our routine, once we were there, was stay out all night, obviously. Then we would get up at like 3, 4 o'clock, send one person down for pizza to bring back to the rest of us. We'd start drinking again at like 4 or 5 o'clock. We would pregame until the sun went down. Then about 8 or 9, we'd roll out to Bally's, which was right across from our hotel. And we would go and watch live music. They had this beautiful live music, open air bar. They had live music there 5 nights a week. And yet, there's the chat. Chat just caught up. Don't worry, guys. In 2 minutes, you're gonna catch up with me. But anyway, we would go there and we would drink even more, get really nice and tightly wound. Then we would bounce. We would either gamble there or we would bounce to Caesar's Palace, one of the two, and basically just stay there all night. Sometimes we would go out like at about midnight. We would decide to hit this dance club that was near us, and the plan was we would go to the club on nights that we were all winning, and I won enough that we were there almost every night. But so we're doing this, and poor Brian, he was such a trooper, man. Brian, again, he was 20, so he couldn't even drink legally. Like, we had to sneak him beers and stuff, and that's no fun. And one thing I do want to mention, probably the single most idiotic thing I ever saw in the history of man, and this is seriously about the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. I mentioned it was this open-air bar that was in Bally's where we would go and watch we'd go and watch live music before we started gambling each night. It was completely open. The only thing that separated it from the rest of the casino was like a 2-foot hall, like spackle drywall, basically just like a chest, not even a chest high wall, but it was only shin high. So a shin high wall that went all the way around, and then one guy watching and carding as you walked into the area, which was stupid to begin with. So, but anyway, it's completely open air. We walk in, and this is when I was still a heavy regular cigarette smoker. We walk in on the first night that we want to go watch live music there. I sit down, order a brewski, light a cigarette, and you thought that I had just slaughtered a puppy on the table. I had 2 bartenders and a bouncer jump right on me. Hey, you got to put that out. You put that out right now. You put that out right now. And during this time, all around you is wafting smoke, like just huge, voluminous clouds of thick smoke, everything from cigars to menthols to cheap cigarettes. I mean, it's a casino. If you've been to a casino, you know what a casino is like. You walk in, and even as a smoker, it can be overwhelming. So, anyway, yeah, they jump on me, and I ask them what the hell the deal is, and they inform me that it is against state law in New Jersey to smoke in a bar, but casinos are immune. So I'm in this open air, basically nothing. It's just an area. Like, if I drug cinder blocks in and just put them in a semicircle, that's about how separate this bar is from the main floor of the casino. But I can't smoke once I'm on one side of those cinder blocks. And yeah, it's really stupid. Once I'm on one side of the cinder blocks, I can't smoke, but I step on the other side, and there's no separation at all, but I can't smoke in a bar because that's considered a bar area. But that's just stupid. But moving on. I'm going to have to hustle this up because 25 minutes to Liquid versus AL. But, so Brian was such a trooper the whole time, man. And one night, though, he got a little ahead of himself. Everybody's had that night where you start your drinking early. We started drinking every night anyway. Early every night anyway. And me and Fabi were the big Guilty Gear players. Brian just kind of watched and laughed and got hammered. And one night, he was punching above his weight. He got a little ahead of himself. We go out to watch live music, and he starts getting the nods. And, everybody knows that, too, where a person who's had a bit too much, like they're trying to play it off, so you just see their shoulders and their hands gradually hunch in front of them, almost like they're going into the fetal position but still standing. And his eyes start to droop, and he starts to rock a little bit. And I'm like, dude, you all right? You all right? And finally, he bails. So he goes back to the room. He says he's going to go back, and he wants to feel better. So So he disappears. And I mean, and he said he was going to go back to the room. So, I mean, it was like a block, if that, up the boardwalk from the hotel, from Bally's to the hotel. So we don't feel like we have to follow him or anything like that. So me and Fabi go down, start to gamble. We sit at the blackjack table. We probably sit there for 3 or 4 hours, give or take, and gamble. And I have another good run, and everything's going really, really well, and all that. And I start to feel guilty, because Brian, he's not 21 yet. He was turning 21 in like 48 hours, but he had put up with us and just watched us have fun basically for so long. And now he's sitting in the room sick, and he's going to, what I consider would be worse is he's sobered up, and now he's just bored and watching TV when he came all the way to Atlantic City to hang out with his buddies. So, and granted, I can't say I'm too noble because it did take me 3 or 4 hours to start feeling that way. But so we decide, to go back a little bit early. It was probably like 1, 2 in the morning. So we walk back to the hotel. We walk in, and I had tried to call his cell phone, no answer. We walk into the main lobby of the hotel, and hunched up in that same fetal position, next to the elevator on a little bench, is Brian. But he had undergone a metamorphosis. Brian, who had left the hotel that night with the intentions to party before he had too much to drink, walked out looking pretty snazzy. He had on the nice button-up. He was rocking the jeans, had his boots on, hair all gelled, styled out. Brian, at this point, hunched up and in the fetal position on that mini sofa, was wearing a pair of shorts that were caked in sand. He smelled like seaweed. He was soaked to the bone, and the shirt he had on was a plain white T-shirt that has to be older than the Empire State Building. It is stained with every color of the rainbow. Probably, to this day, I assume it was probably a piss rag for some bum. And it's missing one shoulder. So he's in this white T-shirt that looked like it belonged. It looked so filthy that Oscar the Grouch wouldn't be caught dead in it. You know what I mean? Like, he literally pulled it out of a trash can. And he's sitting there hunched up. He looks up at me, and the look in his eyes I'll never forget. It was a look as if he knew everything had gone wrong. As if life had turned on him in the most vicious way possible. And then it gave way to anger. So I go back. We see him, and I can't begin to describe what that moment feels like. There's so many questions. I have so many questions. How did this happen? There has to be a sequence of events to explain this. So, as you can imagine, we start laughing so hard we can't even talk for like 2 minutes. Like we're struggling to keep our legs beneath us. We're laughing so hard. The hotel concierge or whatever, the person at the desk, sees it and starts laughing with us. So after a while, we finally calm down, and Brian stands up and punches the button on the elevator. We get in, and we're still laughing, just staring at him, just waiting for an explanation. And all that leaves his mouth is not a fucking word. And that just made it worse. So we get up to the hotel room. And finally, we're able to calm down enough to talk to him and try to find out what happened and how he found himself in such dire straits. The sequence of events goes something a little bit like this. Basically, he left, went home. Oh, and I should mention, when we walked in, the first thing we noticed was that the mini fridge was on its side, and there was like business cards, credit cards, everything strewn everywhere, all over the room. So Brian apparently was very near blackout drunk whenever he went back to the room on his own. He tripped over the mini fridge, turned it over, fell over it. He had his wallet in his hands because he was trying to put the key card back into his wallet. So he ends up chucking his wallet. The wallet's contents fly out everywhere. And according to him, he basically woke up ass over tea kettle, woke up out of his blackout about an hour later. And for some reason, he decided at that point the best way for him to sober up so he could have fun with us was to go swim in the ocean, was to go jump in the ocean and quote-unquote jump waves. He was going to jump waves until he sobered up. So he changed his clothes, has on a decent T-shirt, puts on a pair of shorts that he's going to use as swim trunks, right? Now, keep in mind, he's going to jump waves at like midnight, okay? It's like midnight, and he's going to do this right off the boardwalk. So the way he told it, there wasn't a whole lot to report on that side of things. I mean, he went out, swam in the ocean, got salty, all that. He did say that at one point, he goes, I got way too out. I got way too far out. Wait, that's all his explanation was. At one point, I got way too far out. I thought I was going to die. It's way too far out. But he apparently made it back. But this is where the story takes a turn. As you can imagine, any guy going to the beach, he's going to take his essentials. He's going to take his shoes, going to take his cell phone, going to take his wallet, even though it only at that point only had a key card and cash in it because the rest of his contents were strewn all over the room. So he's going to take his stuff with him. And anyone who's ever been to Atlantic City, you know there are like these little boats and there's little alcoves and stuff like that. These little things that are turned up on the beach at night. So he decides he's going to stash his stuff, his phone, his wallet, his shoes, and he takes his shirt off and puts all that under one of these little alcoves. Now, according to him, he jumps out, goes out to jump waves because it's time for him to sober up. And as he's out there, again, he gets way too far out. His words, way too far out. Should have died. Should have been dead. Way too far out. But anyone who swam in the ocean also knows this. You will often end up quite far. If you're out in the ocean like deep, you will often end up quite far from where you started. You will drift up and down, north, south, east, west. So he ends up drifting to the point that he's looking around and can't even see our hotel. 28 floors high is how big our hotel is, and he can't spot it. Standing on the boardwalk on the beach. According to him, he spent like an hour walking, trying to find our hotel. Finally, he makes it back to where he started. But he realizes that at the time he had sobered up, granted, I guess that part of the plan worked. But at that time, he realizes he has no idea where he's put his stuff. It's dark out. It's windy as hell. If you've ever been to Atlantic City in the summer, it is so windy at night. And he can't, he walks another, up and down the boardwalk for 2 hours looking for his stuff. Cannot find it. Cannot find it. He was a little too drunk to remember where he put it to begin with, so even under the best of circumstances, he may not have been able to find it. In this case, he certainly can. Certainly can't. So the only option he has is to come find me and Thavy, right? But the problem is he's shirtless. He has no shoes. He has no shirt. And he's just in a pair of shorts. So he has no idea what he's going to do. He decides to just find any shirt he can, and as he's looking under one of these little alcoves, one of these little boat areas thingies, he finds the Cyndi Lauper t-shirt, the Cyndi Lauper piss rag, puts it on, and rocks it in all of its glory, missing one shoulder like a boss. So he walks over to the casino where he knows me and Thavy are gambling, or at least where he suspected we were. Tries to walk in to come find us, and they won't let him in. They think he's a drunk, just some bum off the beach, so they won't let him in to come find us. He tries to explain himself, gets security called on him, and they tell him he has to leave immediately or they're going to take him to jail. So he leaves, and what other option does he have? He goes back to the hotel, and that is when we found him. That is when we found him. He had sat at the hotel by the elevator for 2 hours, wearing the Cyndi Lauper. Waiting on us. So, us being the nice guys that we are, even though me and Thavy are a little cranked out and we certainly would have preferred to gamble, we're not going to leave our guy just swinging in the wind, man. So we take to the beach. We change clothes, put on some different shoes. We take to the beach. We're going to find his stuff. We're going to find his wallet, his t-shirt, his shoes, and his cell phone. So I expect it's, with three of us split up, it's going to be a fairly easy task. One goes one way, one goes the other. They walk, a half a mile while I search the area in between. 4 hours later, we have not found his shit. 4 hours later, we had not found it. So at this point, it is getting desperate. We are honestly just assuming that this is going to go wrong. Now, at this point, at this time in the story, Brian and I were the only two smokers. Brian's honestly given up. He's just determined this is the worst trip ever in history. Thavy, though, the industrious Asian that he is, is unwilling to give up. Brian asked me if I have a spare cigarette, so we sit down on the beach to have a cigarette together and try to just salvage what is left of this situation. But, so, we're talking it out, and Thavy's way off. Like, he's like a mile down the beach. He's like this speck we can barely see, hunting under the alcoves and looking in all the places he possibly can. So we're kicking it. We stand up, dust ourselves off, and I'm like, all right, man, don't worry about it. I've won enough that I'll just give you, and this was going to be private because I was going to give him some money to make sure he could, have some fun when he turned 21, and it wasn't going to be a big deal. And he had lost, I want to say he had $500 cash. And, at that point, we're in college. This is 2005. We're we're 21, man. $500 is a lot of money to begin with. But, I mean, you 21-year-old college kid, that's like a month's worth of spending money. That's like 3 months worth of spending money for most of us. So he's all depressed. But out in the distance, a forlorn hope begins to stir. Out in the distance, down the beach, this little silhouette begins to bob up and down, and it seems to be growing larger. Out in the distance, Thavy is in a dead sprint down the beach. Brian turns his head, goes, "What's Thavy doing?" I turn and I look and, I don't know. About 30 seconds go by, and it becomes apparent that Thavy has something in his hands. The look on Brian's face as he realizes this, as the joy of this moment of hope washes over him. His eyes get large. His face flushes. A smile creeps ear to ear. All he can mutter is, "No way. No way." The forlorn image in the distance grows larger and larger. We begin to see he does indeed have something in his hands. One happens to be a T-shirt. Seems to be a pair of shoes in the other. He's getting closer. Brian takes off, sprints down the beach to meet his hero, his rescuer, the man responsible for salvaging what could have been a horrendous trip for the soon-to-be fresh-faced 21-year-old. And just as they're about to meet, just as they are about to collide, Thavy drops to his knees, holding aloft the T-shirt, the wallet, and the cell phone. Much laughs are had. Brian points out that it looks just like the cover of the movie Platoon, if you've ever seen that. But in the end, the trip was indeed salvaged. And Brian and the legend of Cyndi Lauper shall forever live on for the rest of our days. All right, that's the end of that. That's the end of that's the tale of Cyndi Lauper in the beach. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're about 10 minutes out now from Absolute Legends and Team Liquid. Looking forward to seeing the chat catch up with this. I'm going to go ahead and bring the music back up. But keep in mind, story time here on One More Game TV 2. I'm enjoying it too, so I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am. Anyway, going to be getting back underway in just a few minutes. In the meantime, thanks again. Hope you'll hit follow if this is your first time here. Hope to have you back in the future as well. Absolute Legends versus Team Liquid heading your way next.